Hello and welcome to this video. This is going to be level 3. Um, I have kind of given up on titling these sort of as coursework. I think when I backtrack and create my course book, I guess that's going to go with this, I'll have better names for each thing, I think. But just for now, we are within level 3. This is a follow-up video. I guess I'm going to call it like 303 class. I am going to share some infographics here as quickly as I can to get through them and to just bring forth the real inner systems that as a whole that we really want to look at. And oh, and for anybody who's new, right, if you've just jumped into this video, please definitely check out level 1, 2, the videos of level 3 already, because we're well in the way of this series. So I don't want to spend too much time reiterating points from previous lessons, just for those of us who would want to keep moving forward. So if you find yourself confused or lost, please know that in the description or links, in the description or comments, there are links to the background information and some foundations. So with all that started here, I'm going to pull up my first share screen, and just to reiterate, where we were previously for myself and for anybody who kind of follows my channel. I put out 3 meditations just recently that really help us to dive into the inner levels within us of the mind boss, spirit boss, and of the body's boss. And if you haven't had a chance to check those out, I really highly suggest checking them out. But before that is what I really brought that up for. Before those videos, you'll see a level 3 working that is about processes and polarity. And before that, level 3, we have talked about just the inner system as a whole, and how when we turn our lens to look at systems in this kind of way, what we're doing is looking at the self as a whole. So myself, you, every person is an individual whole system, and that's it. Not about external things or others or anything like that. Just about the one person as a whole system. And as you see with the screen share I have here, just a reminder that my own little infographic here of the image of sort of the hourglass person with the spinning Mobius around them, and then the dotted line of the great circle or boundary that really solidifies you as a person, right? It designates you as different from others. It's plain as day as that, right? But the reminder here is that yes, we are a whole, but our whole is really a 3-part system. It is the external workings, the internal workings, and then the overall flow of both of those happenings, and how external workings and service-oriented things reflect inwards on our inner processes, how we think and feel and react to those external things, and also how our feelings, thoughts, and inner worlds reflect out into the external and how we interact with others and how we perform our service. And the handing off and the give and take between all of those kind of values and potential possibilities, right? All those energy transactions reverberate together to create this sort of flow, this whole appearance or presentation of you. And that's the 3rd part, right? Now, to start off and to really talk about systems as a whole, I have already introduced sort of the idea of the organic, upright, original design of the functioning of tool, and then the contrasting use, which is the inverted, inorganic, artificial use of the tool. When we get more into level 3, I'm going to do a video of real comparisons against the systems so that we can really dive into um, the differences between a positively aligned service that is offered out freely and negatively aligned service that is looking to draw in. Um, Both are crucial. Both have as important a role on each other as they do individually, and you cannot have one without the other, and that's why they come together into the overall flow as a presentation, right? Because they are sort of codependent on each other. Now, the organic upright design holds a great balance there, and it holds within it the great truth and alignment to that one truth of oneness, of eternal life, of great before and after, and the creator, and that you have a role here and a purpose. And if you see down below here, I have sort of a more detailed infographic, the same image as above, below, but just with more details in there to really showcase that, okay, yes, this is a tool, which is what I'm showing at the top there is just the tool, what it looks like, the parts of it. But underneath here, we have the distinction of the flow. And I talked a lot about that, about the torus as a tool in level 2, and really breaking out of this image of a stagnant toroidal that's just doing this, because it isn't just doing that. It is either doing this or it is doing that. And it's very crucial that we, as energetic beings, we understand there's give and take, positive, negative flow of energy happening. That way we can harness our energy better, we're not depleting it, we don't find ourselves exhausted or taken advantage of or tricked into things that don't really align with us, right? That's been my intention behind this whole series, and hopefully by discovering our inner systems, like I've been just saying so much, that we learn the work and the exercises within, so that when we go out to do them at the gym with others, like we don't make a fool of ourselves, right? We have a little bit of knowledge points and technical, experiential, you know, experience. I don't know. You get what I'm saying, I'm sure. So let me pass on to the next infographic here, and just to what I was saying before, reiterate with my last video about the design of systems. Systems in themselves, right, are infinite intelligence, just working, doing work. This is how the observer, God, you know, the infinite creator has intelligent design works through, right? It has certain instructions, certain parameters that it follows. And when we're talking about a system as a whole, the system is comprised of a lot of different processes, right? When we turn our focus inwards and we're just looking at the system, its internal workings, then we get to look into what makes that system itself, right? What kind of work is it doing and why? And what is it comprised of, right? And that's very important. That designates why the system is a system, right? We set it apart for a reason to do certain work. It's very important to what makes the system in itself, those inner processes. Those inner processes don't always define the whole, though, right? The inner processes reflect certain aspects of the whole, but the inner processes come together to create the whole. And the whole in itself represents polarity, and it is the collective of all of the transactions that happen within all of the processes. And those, the collection of all of them is showcased through the whole system, and how the whole system interacts then with the external world, with the others out there, right? In the why it has been designated to do what it's doing, well, how does it do that with others, right? And how do others view it? And what is that, what does that role look like? So I bring this infographic up here just to sort of remind us of what we've talked about a lot of the processes, and we're going to dive very much into the processes, and see how each one of the processes becomes an entire realm of its own. It's a level and layer of consciousness that does a certain process. And as the boss, you're diving down into the manager's level to see the workers and understand what the workers are doing and why. And that segregated, pigeonholed view has great possibilities and workings in there. And we learn lots of wisdom from doing that. But it's so crucial important to pull back out of that single one little department within you and to remember the whole, right? And if you're interested in learning, I talked a whole bunch about this already, so I'm not going to get too into it, but the major takeaway point is to understand what I put at the bottom here. No single process can determine overall polarity of the system. I don't care what the boss says, which one they think they're most important, or whoever, they've got the loudspeaker and the microphone. Don't let them fool you. All processes have value. That's why they're set aside and apart, right? And they're all of equal value to the whole, because no part represents the whole. The whole is every part included. And polarity sets the laws and rules of the processes, okay? So a lot of times we go into a system thinking we're going to make changes in the system. We see the system from the exterior, we see it's negatively aligned, it's polarity, we don't like it, we want to change it. And then we think by diving into the processes and forcing change within the process, some process we could get involved in there among so many that are happening, right? We dive into one because we're only one being, we can only do one thing at one time. And we try to force change in a process. And then we look at the overall and we wonder why, the overall appearance isn't really changing. In fact, it probably will get worse. It will probably be super irritated by your efforts of changing it. And this is because processes in themselves cannot be changed from within. The creator, the observer, the CEO, the board, the managers, the higher ups in the system, they set the atmosphere and the tone. They write the laws and the rules of the business. All the workers follow that. And so if you want to change how the workers are feeling and doing their work, what you do is you have to work in those higher levels of the bosses to change the atmosphere, to change your assumptions, your thoughts and feelings and frequency around things. By working to affect the overall polarity and shift the reason the polarity is, then the processes can follow suit. Then the processes can do better work. But it doesn't, you can't do it backwards really, unless by some chance you happen to have all processes involved in making a shift at the same time. But anyways, just to so people can understand, because a lot of people get very wrapped up in polarity and service to others or service to self, or if you're being good or not, and if you're ascending or not, and if you're on the right path or not. And that really is kind of a silly worry or conception to even try to have, in my opinion, because if your little processes and your little workings are all aligned, you'd never worry about where you're going, because all of them are following the alignment. They're leading in the direction you want to go. You don't just keep going and then wonder about what direction you're going at. You know what I mean? I'm going to get a little too caught up in previous topics. So if you're interested more about learning the differences between processes and polarity, I do have the video that I just put out previously, so I won't get too caught up in that. Last old infographic that I'm going to share right now, just to, as again, keep us all on the same page, reiterate old facts, underline what we're going to be moving into for new topics. This tool of the torus, which I've talked so much about, is, just something that we move energy through. It is the transactions of all of our energy exchanges happening. They can all be interpreted through this really great tool. And the Taurus tool in itself has us always hold space and remember and to look for external processes happening, internal processes happening, and the flow that conducts between the two, and the overall presentation that is created by those two. So ourselves in our whole can look like either of these. And just know that this is a snapshot glance. This is a point in time, taken. It doesn't reflect motion, and it doesn't reflect the change. So change is always possible, always happening. And that's the beauty and the reason, right, that we have this lemniscatic, eternal figure 8 handoff, ebb and flow, light and dark, day and night, wake and sleep, good and bad, positive, negative. This is why and how we have the two. It's a constant seeking of balance. It's always moving, always in flux and flow. But when we're talking about polarity, when we're meeting somebody, when we come in direct contact with another, we put our energy into a project, or we go to a job or a business or whatever, when we walk into another system like that, that's already established, right? They get, as we get, these snapshot images of the presence available at the moment, of the system and how it's working at the moment. And they can be reflected with great clarity or with a lot of disfigurement, a lot of confusion, a lot of cloudiness. Everyone is different. Every time is different. Every moment is different, right? And sometimes you might be, beaming very clearly in a very positively oriented, high momentum Taurus of positive love flow. And it might be very clear. And at other times, you might have, some issues with your inner system, some light and shadow work that's causing some dissonance, and some poor reflections, perhaps some cloudiness. And so it doesn't look as clear and as nicely flowing, and as bright of light coming through. Might look like, the day on a cloudy day where sun comes through and then the clouds pass over and it's dim and there's changes, right? We are an ever-changing, ever-flowing essence. The plasma electromagnetic body, right? But just to understand that there are rules and workings here. There's alignments and orientations, and when you choose to see them, if you choose to be confused by them, you want to get lost in gray and gradients, you want to chase your tail and have justifications and reasons for everything, and sort of just do this, you're welcome to do that as well. There's tons of space in eternity to do that. If you want to look to confuse the two, you can. It's there for you to do. But where's the evolving in that? Where's the movement in that? Where's the goals and the climbing of the mountain and seeing the view and the hitting your peaks? That's not there when you choose to do that kind of stagnation. When you choose to say, okay, it's there, my power is my choice. Am I choosing negative alignment, or am I choosing positive alignment? Am I choosing truth and goodness and following my inner wisdom in my heart, or am I choosing fear and ignorance and blindness and safety and security and falsity to just stagnate and stay as is because that's what feels good right now? Neither is wrong or right, and that's what third density evolving is all about. But we're moving out of that time as well, so it's kind of not really time for that anymore. But I talk about that other videos. Don't want to get lost in humanity's ascension path right now. Let's focus on the tools, right? So here, right underneath that thick black line, you can see the two opposing toroidal structures. We have the organic flowing green there, the positive flow. And you can see that it has like a positive sign out here, the negative sign at the bottom. And inside there in the hourglass figure, you'll see the reverse of the battery. And the battery is positive down below and negative at the top. And this contrasting setting is crucial to the tool. and to collecting energy and harnessing it, creating, attraction and repulsion, and this sort of sacred boundary that becomes you. So you'll always see um, this meeting of negative and positive, this balancing action, the poles um, working with each other to sort of hold each other in these positions. um, and so conversely, the negative, the red over here, you will see it's the same figure, but it's turned upside down. So the positive little circle is down below, and the negative little circle is up above. And you'll see the arrow distinction of the flow is opposite as well. The arrows on the negative side, you'll see they're drawing in, right? They're pushing out the bottom, they come around and they draw on the top. Versus the positive flow, which pushes out the top and around, and then it comes and draws up through the roots. I show this as a whole to remember, right? We're a whole tool. That first image of the organic or inorganic model here is incorporating the whole. The toroidal of the external of your service, the inner vortex of you and your inner workings in your system, and the whole of the Mobius flow, that creates you. Those two images right there incorporate those. When we look down below at my images here, the inner core flow within duality polarity, I am focusing on the internal system only. And that's what level 3 has really been about, right? The internal systems. So that's why I'm sharing this infographic once again to just sort of go over these points of the differences between the settings of the inner systems. Because I am going to talk quite a bit at first on the organic flow. Because I am biased. I've created this series as service to others in an orientation that I live in my life. And seek truth in. And so I find great value and also dire importance on showcasing the organic flow and helping people to settle into that and to find that within themselves for themselves. But yes, the negative orientation has value as well. There's wisdom points that one learns through selfish behavior, through hurting others, through abuse, through overextension of power, through tyranny, through hurtful, abusive tactics. There's lessons learned on both sides. Victims and those of us who have been a victim of that kind of behavior of others, sometimes we really get wrapped up in our own pain and our own life lessons that come on the victim's side of the spectrum of the situation. However, there is wisdom points, knowledge, and unconditional love. There's positively aligned lessons, knowledge points that are gained by being, the aggressor. Even though it is the negative point, it is the bad guy, in the situation. There's still good to be pulled out of that. There's still great truths to be learned through that behavior for that person. When they choose to accept it that way, when they can finally break out of their own lies of hate they have against themselves, of pain and suffering they have inside themselves here, when they can finally uncover that and love themselves again, then those wisdom points light up and they realize, oh yes, this, and this out of that situation. Leave the rest. Apologize, forgive, let go of the rest. There's always hope to shift. There's always potentiality of polar shifts and of changes. And we'll go into the diagram more extensively when I'm comparing the two, and we'll talk about and really dive into the inner hourglass and how actually there is the sort of 0 point in the middle of the entire torus that rests at the center of the hourglass, your 0, coordinate space, and how that is the real harnesser of the flipping of the flow. And that comes from the spirit realm and source and God and your truth. And I'll dive into that with more clarity later, and we'll compare against seeking that out and aligning with that versus covering that up or denying that, and where those two things get us at a later point. But just to understand, this is the basics of the differences, right? So when we talk about the inner system here, this inner negative flow on the organic side, it is balancing out the positive external flow of the toroidal that we're not really mentioning here in the bottom diagrams. But understand that this whole directed inward system, service to self, inner system, works beautifully and harmoniously with the external opposing systems, and they balance each other. In the negative alignment, they do rest in a contrasting position, but because the tool in itself is inverted, work is much more difficult. And so instead of having a chance to ever really get great balancing work happening in the inorganic alignment, like we see in the organic alignment, the inverted tool usage can never really get to balance between the two, because all of its main focus, all of its main drive is always focused on the overall and the external and taking in more and surviving. And so it doesn't really ever worry about balancing in the inner workings, because there's way too much going on in the external to ever even quiet down enough to get in there. And again, we'll go into this a little bit deeper after in the next videos. But in my infographics here, you'll see, you have the organic flow allows the heart, which I have in green and just large and open, the inner service, right? Your negatively aligned inner workings view the self, you, as God source creator. And so when you are having this flow that is negatively aligned, right, it's pushing out through the roots and going out through the universe of you inside of your whole body, right, sending out service energies out through the body. And then when it's returning in, it is drawing in everything it needs, nutrients, energy, love, light. Also, it's drawing back in debris, carbon monoxide, trash, like toxins, anything within the body vessel that needs to be circulated out, needs to be passed away to the next level, it is collecting all of that stuff and bringing it back in. And when the flow comes in a negative alignment in this way, it passes down and it comes through the energy centers, through your layers, right? And as it's passing through these layers, it's coming through the mind, the logic, the truth center, and into the heart, and being absorbed through the heart, and then finding its way to where it needs to go. So the heart and the truth center are aligned and open and connected. And as all of this stuff has been collected, it's going through there. It's knowing it's divinely connected. It knows where it needs to go, and it passes through within the body in that way. And it also charges up the battery. And when it passes through the 0 point within the heart center and the energy shifts, right? The 0 point flips the poles, so to speak. And it comes from drawing in now, and the negative receivership flips and it comes into pushing out, and the active, directive, sort of masculine positive energies, right? And that is fueled by your eternal flame, this flame underneath there. And that gives this extra oomph of energies that's needed to do work within you, to serve the creator, to serve the self. And of course that works wonderfully because you are the creator of the self. And when you're doing this kind of work in balance with the positive external toroidal of service, you see yourself as a divine reflection of God and the great other, all others. And so the self is simultaneously the others. And so no matter what kind of work you're doing for the self at that time, it's service to others. It's service to God and source, because it's aligned with truth and it's reflecting every other. Just like if you were doing that work, that same exact work you're doing for yourself for another, it would be the same work, because you're seeing yourself as another, as the other when you're doing that self work. And that's the real intentional difference between service to self and service to others. all service to self can be positively aligned if within yourself and you see the divine reflection of God. You see the divine reflection of all other persons out there, all other beings of life and value of consciousness. You know that you're inhabiting that same level of worth that they are, and that they deserve the same love and respect and sovereignty that you do, right? When you hold that divine truth, all service to self becomes service to others. Conversely, on this other side where we have the inverted heart in a cage, and I have created this cistern pit here, and it's right above the 0 point. And inside that pit is where the battery is. And if you'll notice, the battery is upright and it's in its usage position, right? You're using your battery to fuel your inner workings. You're using your battery to fuel your life because you don't connect with your one truth and your eternal energy source. You know, you think you're limited, and in that belief structure and in denying your truth to creator and the before and after, you solidify and create and sort of lock the battery in your inner systems in this position, and you say, no, you're to be used. You're not ever flowing. You're not just a storage unit here for certain X, Y, and Z measurements that we'll get into in the inner systems workings later. No, you're to be used all the time. We need you to survive. If you're depleted, we die, kind of. Those become the truths and the laws of this negative flow. And if you see, the flame is enlarged on this negative flow as well. And that's because, you know, we really pump up our ego in our external service value when we have this inverted view and when we have the negative alignment of happening within the toroidal overflow overall. This pushing of service up and out within the body is creates also a really negative conversation and atmosphere within the body, where you think, you know, you're pushing out your service onto the rest of yourself, and also you're trying to draw in the things that you need for survival, the nutrients and love and light that you need. You're trying to draw it into your roots from within you, instead of drawing it out from the external world in retribution of service, in actual oxygen fresh provided from Mother Earth, and the nutrients that you eat, in water and sitting on the earth, and all these things that are so natural that we usually draw in our resources as. We're doing that action and that expectation inside of our body. And so we see a limited version of the universe, limited version of resources, limited amounts of oxygen available, limited amounts of nutrients and resources, because we're cutting out the supply chain and we're not allowing ourselves to draw our supplies from the external world like we should. Instead, we've kind of turned our back on the external world because we think survival of the fittest, me against the world kind of thing. There's a big boundary created in this inorganic inversion. And with that, of course, you're not going to want to draw in from outside comfortably. You draw in from outside through all of those channels of checking and stuff. Through, like I said from before, and now I'm getting like super wrapped up in the differences between these two flows, and I want to have a whole video on that, so I really excuse me for that. And let's refocus on the actual point here, which is not the differences in the system so much. Whoops, there go my notes. Not even following them. So what's the point? Anyways, to draw it in and simplify here, our potential whole system can either operate in this divinely set negative alignment inside of us, or in an inorganic way to which has a positively flowing system within. I'm going to exit out of that one and pull in my newest screen share. I hope this isn't going too long. Okay. So, just like I said, we as a whole, you as a whole, are part of a three-part system. The three-part system in itself can also simultaneously or apart from, right? This is the beauty of exploration as well, right? The fact that we can separate out systems and dive into one and kind of forget about the others for a while, right? Because it's a world and a layer all of its own. Um, when we do these diving in, separation, and getting into all of the deeper functions, crucial to remember the path back out and to remember that it is a part of the whole. So that's really why I wanted to start this whole video with a sort of reiteration of that. It's gotten a little off onto a tangent for too long. But yes, this three-part system of external, internal, and flow can also be viewed and understood as mind, body, and spirit. And each layer, mind, body, and spirit, form its own layer of consciousness, to which you, the whole, as your consciousness, can be understood as the creator, as the observer of the whole. And so that leads us to this other one that I have created here, which is a little bit more in depth. When we talk about ourselves as systems, it's can be overwhelming and confusing because, there's just a multitude of variabilities. So it's important to stick to the structure and understand that within the structure is always the same plot and plan. And the purpose is always the same, which is balancing. And so as we look at each one of these different layers, always keep in mind that not only is there light and shadow work happening, is there positive and negative charges being handed off with energy interactions, exchanges in that layer. There is also happening, or within that happening of the exchanges, right? It's because of the processes on each of the three layers that allow for that collection and for the polarity to be observed. And so when we get into the mind and we look at just the mind, body, and layer of consciousness, the mind in itself has its own light and shadow reflections, its own entire layers of working that are available, of balancing, of wisdom to be gained, and exploration that's needed for you to be done with it. And if you need help, and whenever you were diving into that light work and communication within the mind, then we can break it down into, okay, the mind has external processes that deal with external things, the others. The mind has internal processes that deals with my inner workings of myself and how I process my inner energy exchanges. And my mind has a spirit as well, which is that third interconnecting Mobius ever-flowing handoff that happens between those two, external and internal. And when you listen and learn, you can then dive even further into the mind's external workings. And when you get into the mind's external workings, and you just focus your view there, you say to yourself, wow, there's light and shadow work here. There's positive and negative here. That means there's external and internal workings. That means there's mind, body, and spirit actually here available within just the mind's mind. And you'll find distinctions, you'll find nuances available when you continue that dissection. But always remember, pull it back, because within, then, you look at the body's intelligence, the body's scope of reality. And within the body, there's external workings, there's internal workings, there's the spirit of the body, the handoff of those two. And within the spirit as well, when you learn the spirit, you will see, wow, the spirit has a light and a shadow. The spirit has positive and negative. The spirit has an overseer of the higher self there that's reflected in that lemniscatic flow. And now, my friends, to understand the great depth and the hugeness of this is when you can see those roots, those three prongs spreading from each part, or see this Venn diagram of sort of blue and red and the purple it creates, um, the blending that's offered, the gradient that becomes available between the two. You can pull back and see the beautiful three available lenses of you and how they come together and blend. And then you pull back even further and you can see the whole of you and how you interact with the external world, how you interact with yourself, with your internal world. And then you can say, wow, I have a lot more awareness in both of those different system communications. And because of the different awarenesses I have really dived into and created in these more tangible bodies of the mind's body and the body's body, the spirit's body and the Mobius flow within there, those sort of intangible, unspeakable parts, they really become more potent within you. And then that creates overall ease, that creates overall polarity with huge collection of a good charge that has a momentum to it, that you can fly in your life through, that you go into service with, that empowers you, that reverberates out into all others in your direct vicinity, that they feel, and that their spirit, that their mind hears strong communications from your spirit, from your mind, from your body. And you'll see the assistance, you'll see the ripple effect out into others, even those who can't even comprehend this type of work. Because the layers speak in their own languages. And we can't always assess and understand another's capabilities of reception. But as we tone and tune our own transmissions out on all layers, and they become clearer, they become more aligned to your light, and they become more aligned to your truths, and they sing, you know. Others layers hear that, and like a tuning fork, that perfect beautiful tone, that 528 hertz, you know, it makes its way out, and they receive it. And even if their systems are not as well tuned as yours, they can still receive that. And you'll see differences. You know, it has great value in its workings. But before we get too wrapped up in the external sort of symptoms that come with it, you know, the retribution that comes with the work, you have to do the inner work first, you know. And that's really why I started with the inner layers and why we do the work inside first, because when we are serving ourselves, it's easier for us, you know. And so this video has mostly just been sort of a reiteration, a catch up for level 3 to really cement in the structure of the inner systems, and also as a great reminder that the inner systems, while we are focusing on them, they are a balancing factor. They work in conjunction with the external system, and that is why the negative orientation of the inner system works so well. So I think I'm going to leave it there for now. I hope I didn't go on too long. I wanted to try to keep this video short. Like I said, my next video is going to be a comparison of the organic alignment and the inorganic alignment of the inner systems, just so we can look at service and really start to define the differences between positive alignment and negative alignment. Because sometimes, like I had talked about already, you know, service to self and service to others can really get sort of stapled into these terms, where we see service as others as always positive, good, and we see service to self as negative and bad. And I worked in level 1 a lot to pull away from good and bad. And let's not talk about morality or ethics really at this point. That's a polarity thing. That's a whole systems thing. It's really not fair to put that marker on processes and on internal workings. Um, it's very confusing when you do that, actually, and it's deterrent to the overall process. So if you are finding yourself really linked into that and you've missed kind of my foundational talks in level 1 and the beginnings of level 2, definitely go to those videos and work on your sovereignty and stuff, because it's so crucial that we get away from the judgment of morality and good versus bad and tagging it to positive and negative. Some of it aligns, some of it is right, but not all of it. We want to get away from distortions like this. And so inner systems showcase this best, because sometimes a system which is negatively oriented towards self-service can have an overall positive balance and charge collected after all the transactions are sorted and done. Because, like I said, the service to the self is actually aligning itself and calling the self a beautiful reflection of all others and God. And saying that no matter whose self we put on this face of the system, we're going to serve it in this way. Thank you for your face and yourself. We love you as the creator. You are the source. But also we recognize that any other being we would do this service for, because they're the same. And that's why, negatively oriented systems can sometimes, they're not always bad. They're not always service to self. Service to self in a negative alignment plasters that one face. It says that face is the only face. You can never switch it with another. That's a whole other system. That's a whole other thing. That's not us. We will not switch it with another face. It has to be this face. We serve this one only. Everything is for this. And when you make that exclusion in your intention of service, and you're blockading out all others with the intention of propping up the self at expense of the others especially, right, that becomes negatively charged. That has an overall negative charge. It doesn't matter what kind of positive services you try to have processing within the system. The overall polarity and charge is always going to turn negative and be negatively aligned service to self, because the initial intention is not the great other. It is not God's source. It's the self. It's self-survival. It's the individual system. And that, the intention, is really what is the cut and dry that sets the rules and the tone of the system. It's energetic, it's thought, it's nothing to do with the actions happening. The actions happening are because of the thoughts and the intention gone into it beforehand. And so yeah, it can be very confusing at first, especially for people who want to just tie in and think service to self is always bad and negative. Yeah. I guess I'm going to leave it there for now, and hopefully this hasn't been too confusing. Hopefully it hasn't been too roundabout. I hope you'll tune in next time to where I'll showcase, like I said, the two sort of versus each other in a single infographic, and we'll really do a comparison against the two. So that when we dive into systems within yourself, when you look at it and go have conversations with the boss, you can sense and feel and ask them and observe what the intentions are with the boss and the managers and the worker within your layers. And sense and feel for yourself if the workers know the truth, or if the workers are malaligned and they don't feel appreciated, they don't feel connected to the creator, to all the bosses up the chain within you. So yeah, if you have missed the meditations or you haven't had time to get to them yet, I hope you will take a chance to dive into these layers for yourself and give yourself time to have conversations with your bosses and do this kind of work and introspective discoveries. Thank you so much for joining me and listening to me for this talk, and I will catch you next time.